Um, I'm making this recording because our conference last night did not start correctly. We're using a new computer program for our conferences, trying to get away from big corporations like Microsoft and Google and Zoom. So we were experimenting with a new program called Jitsi. And we may continue with it, but they gave us a flag that seems to be repeating that says that all recorders are currently busy, which means that we can't record the conference. But that flag only lasted for like about 10, 15 minutes of the start of our conference. So, and I kept pushing the button, and finally it started. And so that's the reason why it's kind of a clunky start here. And on top of that, I'm not entirely happy with Jitsi. There's a number of things that are going on, this conferencing program that we were trying. There's another one called Talks that we're looking to go towards possibly. I'm investigating that too. So we're definitely getting away from Zoom. That's out in the past. But there's problems with Jitsi. Anyway, enjoy the conference. I think this is a really good conference, one of our better conferences. And I hope you like it, and I'm going to split it into smaller clips so that you can people that are busy can easily cherry pick the good parts. Yeah, that's what's coming up, and I just wanted to kind of make this introductory note so that you're not confused about starting after David Scheid is already in the middle of his presentation of his court case here. So anyway, hope you enjoyed the video. Take care. Goodbye.
For misfeasance, for Rico. For Rico, now we got a recording. Did you hear that?
Yeah. We finally got started.
Okay, good. I'm going to go ahead and close mine down.
All right.
So when we have no surety to government misfeasance, malfeasance, RICO crimes, and whatever, the surety becomes the corpus. It becomes the person, which means that in order to cash in on that, we the people have to put them in jail. In common law, I've been using common law since about 2016, when that second to the last federal court case was in the courts, with a $100 billion policy that was just dismissed and basically cut me off from access to the court, period. Since that time, that's treble damages, because I had common law claims in there. Treble damages of $100 billion means $300 billion now. And since then, I have been working in common law to issue constitutional citations. They come under, for anybody who knows Hartford Van Dyke, I've been using some of his stuff and issuing constitutional citations, which I placed into the government's hands, placing them in commerce on certain the violations. I've also issued notice to the government, particularly of Michigan, but also of the United States, of the third-party notary process. I've thanks to Charles and his website, I've posted these notices of these debts that are owed in the public forum for years, and I've let all them know about it, and they have just done nothing about it. They've just acquiesced and exhibited tacit agreement. Those are legal terms. And I've let them know I'm in debt collections. I'm in debt collections right now. So this latest, now that I've been evicted from the state of Michigan, because I've been a targeted individual, my claims include an attempted murder. In 2018, I've had people, Nikki, everybody knows Nikki Hannavig, I believe. Nikki had sent me something in March of 2018 showing me that the state of Michigan was trolling her website for me on an article that she had about me on her website. And within a day or two, the FBI was at my door banging. And a day or two after that, I was in the hospital with sepsis in my circulatory system, and I lost 2 legs and 7 fingers to amputation. I almost lost my life, but I've got enough reasonable evidence. I took photographs, by the way, of those FBI agents outside of my home. And I've put these into, after I was well enough out of the hospital, I presented FOIA requests for who these agents were, because they came to my hospital room also, questioning me, interrogating me with nobody else in the room while I'm on pain medication and all this stuff. So I've tried to find out what they were doing there, what kind of reports they have. And I could go on and on and on more about all of that stuff. But I've got all this reasonable evidence to show that I was a targeted individual. And when none of that stuff worked, and then the state of Michigan tried to keep from providing me with services that I need as a disabled person to survive. And just about 3 months ago, I was completely evicted from the home that I was in by the landlord and the state court, and I removed the case to a federal court, and the judge just sat on it for 6 weeks and then kicked it back to the other court, completely denying me access to both of these courts. And because the first court at the state level was just railroaded this thing through. Denying me access also. So now I have bugged out of in being evicted. I said I'm just getting the hell out of Michigan altogether because I no longer have my family there. They're safely out of the state. And I have moved to a different state, and I have filed a case in federal court in this other state now. And I just did that a couple of weeks ago. And when I did, naming the United States as the chief plaintiff, it was David Scheid versus the United States of America et al. And I got 95 different separately listed, I'm calling them co-trustees. I am a beneficiary, and they are the trustees. And so basically, I put this in there. This clerk sent the whole thing back to me, saying that me as a quad amputee has to give a hard signature on my documents. So go figure. So I'm working right now. I've got it completed, but I'm thinking about attaching to this response here, basically escalating this problem of me having access to this court in this state, in this federal court, by an agent of the United States that's preventing me from getting into this court, and adding a constitutional citation onto this one. But let me go on here. Charles and I see a potential in setting up a banking system, and this is one of the reasons why I was happy to see John Root on here. Charles and I, because we're both familiar with, I don't think I've had the opportunity to be on a call with John. If I have, I've been silent. But John, I just want you to know that a couple of years back, Charles and I had deep discussions with regard to Common Core and our common good, and I, Ann Arbor was nearby, and I was aware that there was a Common Good implemented in some of the stores there, and so I'm very interested. Let me go ahead and read from my little outline here. Charles and I we see the potential in setting up a banking system, and this was also what Hartford Van Dyke was doing, to put the full faith and credit of the public, which is deteriorating big time right now against the United States, to have the full faith and credit of the public be more skewed towards our direction in our claims of damages against the United States than the United States banking system itself. We see opportunities for people. If we were to set this whole thing up right, we would see the opportunity based on the evidence, and that I've got loads of it, that people could be paying their taxes to a trust that we set up instead of to the government. We see opportunities for selling our claims of damages to overseas countries that owe the United States money. Maybe they'd be interested in paying us pennies on the dollar or something like that instead, or value. I'm not talking about even using the dollar, because another thing is that we are using we see using digitally encrypted accounting methods to keep the foreigners, basically the United States government that's using this foreign currency that's foreign to our Constitution. We see using the digitally encrypted method as a means of keeping the foreigners out of our business. So that pretty much concludes what I've got. When we have common law claims, and we've got the ability, if we have the ability to let people know about it and see if they have more full faith and credit in what we're doing than what the government's doing, then I think that we can start doing some pull. And if I start with $306 billion, which is, that last federal case of $300 billion, plus I've got another $6 billion that I have. They have a tacit agreement to that's already been posted on the web, been served to them, and they don't have any dispute whatsoever about it, and it's all documented. I yield.
Excellent. John, do you have comments?
Yeah, sure.
Please respond.
Well, Hartford Van Dyke has discovered over the decades that he's been at this that there's a big difference between acknowledging the validity of what you're claiming and actually monetizing the bonds. And I think that that's something that needs to be taken very seriously, that the reality of our situation is such that the system is so corrupt that, as one judge said, I can't do what I obviously should do because it would cause chaos in the banking system. I mean, she said it. It was in her ruling, right? She couldn't give quiet title because if she did and it were known, it would cause chaos. So the situation that we're in, how shall I put it? It's very troubling that the efforts that we've made to hold the system to account, doing everything so that any reasonable person would see how reasonable what we did was, right, doesn't work. And my conclusion is that we're not sovereign and we're not in a position to create the situation that we want until we are actually sovereign. And so there are two things that are necessary in order to be sovereign. One is being able to issue the money, and the other is being able to enforce or to defend. And it's usually in the organic documents in the colonial times, it's always expressed as defend. So there are two approaches that are being taken. One is the well-ordered militia, and the other is, well, let's get our community-created credit up and running, which is what Common Good is all about. So if we were to create townships, the tens, the hundreds, the thousands, the 100,000s, that whole idea of a bottom-up organization, what I call the Jeffersonian Ward Republic, because Jefferson called it the Ward Republic, then we would actually be in that position of sovereignty where we're creating the conditions in which we want to live, which is the essence of sovereignty. And the main thing that I believe that we're missing in our understanding of what we're doing is the proper relationship between the individual and the community. And you can say, as a kind of a principle, that the aim of the community always must be to empower the individual. So if you turn the relationship that we now have to our government, the government seems to think that its mission is to restrain the individual, every which way. So you have no access to capital. You have to do what somebody who has money wants you to do, not what you want to do. The whole system is designed to completely constrain you so that living your life voluntarily as inspired is very difficult. And I'll bring this to a close in just a second. The point is that our ability to create the conditions in which we want to live is there are no obstacles to it. Everything that we need is available, but creating the awareness that we can do that is very difficult. That's what an effort like this is about. That's what the United States of America Republic is about. That's what the assemblies are about. That's what the well-organized militias are about. So I'm working on a project called the Union, which aims to bring all of these efforts together. I yield.
Thank you, John. Yes. And David has summarized his case very well. Are you guys following my screen share?
It isn't up yet.
Say what?
It'll come up in a minute, but it isn't up yet.
Yeah. Maybe.
There we go.
There we go.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, it's in now.
Okay. Yeah. 4.3, that's David's case in Michigan. Well, the case is rooted in Michigan, although David is no longer there. So, David, did you have any further response to John, or can we continue on here?
Well, the only thing I might add is that if we're looking for incentive to bring those people together based on facts, based on evidence, based on their acquiescence to these facts and evidence and billing, because I have been also engaged in common law billing practices, and I am in debt collections right now. And so they've acquiesced to all this stuff to the tune of 306 billion with the B. So, I'd like to throw that into the kitty because I'm acting as relator. Something like, and this case that I'm trying to get filed into the federal court right now is a False Claims Act, quitam. So I'm not going in to sue Michigan for, based on a lot of stuff. I'm going in to sue the whole United States government and the state government on down. 95 people I've named, and entities that I'm claiming inside of all of this chain and wheel conspiracies, which Nikki knows a lot about, Nikki Hanovic.
Right.
I've been able to prove all this stuff because I've got 18 years of evidence, both in hard copies and of storage and in digital format. and it's been served. I've been denied access to the courts. And basically, my position is we've paid all these taxpayers have paid all these government officials, and we can prove that they have taken these payments under a trust agreement, being the constitution of the trust that they've sworn an oath and have a duty to serve. And they haven't done it. They've taken the money, but they haven't done it. So my False Claims Act claim is that these people owe the money back to the taxpayer. And I have given the government opportunity after opportunity to do something about it, and they've chosen not to. So I'm stepping up in the capacity somewhat of a private attorney general, but I'm doing it in the common law as a private public proxy is the term that I'm using. It's a common law term, whereas the private attorney general is the statutory term. And Charles knows I've been in the courts a long time, always as the plaintiff. And even though they kicked me out thinking that they're just going to wear me down, even down to the nubs of my legs and my fingertips that are gone, that I still come back, and I'm still coming back as the plaintiff every freaking time. And so they owe this debt. And I'm coming back not just on my own behalf, but I'm coming back on behalf of all the people who have paid taxes to these idiots that are wearing down this country and taking it into treason and sedition and all that, insurrection and domestic terrorism. And I can prove all of it. I yield.
Sure. May I?
Yeah, John, go ahead.
One of the things that's very interesting to understand is that once we're issuing a currency, there's no longer need for taxes, because we issue the currency as a receipt for the goods and services that we've decided are, what we want our government to do. So there's no need for taxes because of the seigniorage. And seigniorage is simply the difference between what it costs to produce the currency, digital or printed or whatever, and the value that we assign to it. It makes a huge difference when you think about the role that taxation and the control that the taxation idea gives the government. Even though all the taxes are voluntary, et cetera, it's still an awful lot of people complying with the, with the tax code. So not having any taxes would make a big difference in the way that people experience their government. In other words, whenever there's a decision to do something, then we fund it by issuing the money. There's no question where are we going to get the money. Nobody's wondering where we're going to get the money. If we've agreed that it's good, we'll issue the money. And we'll regulate the money supply so that the money always maintains its value. That's enough.
Okay. Thank you. Any comments and questions from anybody else before we move on to other cases here?
I have a question. There's a considerable body of these kinds of liens against oaths, against the courts, against the malfeasance that proves the corruption.
Right.
What does anybody think about what would be necessary to get the courts to recognize and enforce?
Why don't we wrap up our series on individual cases?
Yes.
And we can go directly into that issue, John.
Sure.
Okay.
I have an observation about Dave's case, if you don't mind.
Chris, please jump in.
Well, it seems to me, Dave, that what we're seeing is a pattern, practice, and custom, observable and objectively provable, that the FBI has become a terrorist organization, or maybe always was, here in America, and that they are acting as an enforcer for the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, on these so-called IRS federal debts and debt collections. And they are absolutely terrorizing American people on their own soil, which seems to be adverse to their portended positions and antithetical to American law. Do you, because I've undergone the same sort of abuse only twice as you, where I have been terrorized. And I did note on a call I was on last week with Charles and others that Title 18 USC 1503 at SEC, which has to do with terrorizing victim witnesses or informants, such as yourself and myself, seem to come into play. What say you, sir?
Are you? Is there more? Yeah.
No, I was wanting to know what you thought about that, Dave.
Oh, okay. Well, the FBI has definitely been involved both in the my attack as my attackers and in the cover-up, because I have submitted FOIA requests to the Department of Justice in effort to get information about what these guys were, what kind of report that they've got. I have since been trying to get a passport. I was trying to get a national passport as opposed to a citizenship passport, and I submitted. A long story short, they gave me a passport, but it wasn't in line with my application. They sent me a separate letter saying that they changed my application. They changed my passport identification to coincide with the information that they had on me. And so I've been trying to find out what information is that, and I'm not getting any answers. So, they're covering this stuff up, and I definitely agree with anything, whether it's statutory or in common law, that we need to be, going after accountability for these people. And I do remember one thing I did want to say was that what the FBI is doing to terrorize us in their statutory system unlawfully, we have the right to do in common law through what do you call them, it's the people that we hire to go get them.
Marshals?
Not the U.S. Marshals, but the
bounty hunters,
sheriffs,
bounty hunters. That's it, bounty hunters.
Bounty hunters.
We've even got the TV show that focuses on that, but that's a common law term, bounty hunters. I believe. I yield.
Thank you, David. We've had a pretty good discussion of David's case there, and lots of options that we can get into the details later. But continuing on with our agenda of going through all the cases that are all linked before our court, we've got a foreclosure case from Cynthia Moore in South Carolina. Cynthia, are you here? I don't think you are, but please correct me if I'm wrong. Cynthia, are you here? I don't hear her. So
FYI, Charles, I didn't hang up. Somehow I got disconnected or jettisoned from the call while I was in the midst giving some information to David on the Mediation Declassification Review Board commissioners for the agencies whenever they refuse to honor their Public Duty Act obligations to comply with Sunshine Act, Public Records Act, and FOIA Act requests.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, I've taken it to the office of the inspector general and stuff like that. They're just as malfeasant as all the rest of them. You know, another commission set up that's supposed to look into this stuff. I just, at what point, how many different doors are we going to have to try to open, or they create new ones? You know, until we just say, okay, enough is enough. You know, we'll just take what we've got here. We've got enough evidence. I yield.
Well, I'm certainly in agree with you that it is frustrating, and it's not for the less than let's call it the intrepid adventurers to go down this path, like yourself and myself. I have received a national's passport, and that communication was provided to me. Mine was stolen before by some criminal aspects of the FBI and Joint Terrorism Task Force here in Las Vegas. And whenever I directed my replacement order, even though I had to pay for it again, being victimized the second time by the Secretary of State's office, those particular national passports are provided exclusively by the Secretary of State's Bureau of Consular Affairs agency. The Secretary of State is now an agency, an executive agency under the executive powers of the POTUS as the chief executive to create these private profits agencies, which I'm sure is why they mistreated me and forced me to have to pay a second time when my passport was only about 2.5 or 3 months old, whenever it was purloined from my truck. But whenever I received the replacement, I did get a cover letter from the Bureau of Consular Affairs, which has primacy, the responsibility to issue all diplomatic immunity passports, both the special and the other ones, for all diplomatic immune individuals on the planet. So that's something that may be helpful for you, and if you need more information, I'm glad to help you out.
Okay. All right. You catch that, David?
Thank you. Yes, I got that. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Chris. And
Can I throw something in on that?
pardon me?
This is Gary, Charles.
Gary, jump in. Yeah.
Yeah, I lost my internet, so I'm on the phone. Anyway, there's a UN ruling that 2 passports are required for the United States.
How's that work?
So that could be also used. Well, remember, the federal departments in 1945 went over to the UN, came under the UN control. And a lot of our agencies, as you know, do belong to the UN. But there's a UN resolution that says there is 2 passports from the United States, and it must be enforced. I remember reading this. Sometimes it's helpful to read the other side's information.
Yeah, it'd be nice if maybe you could keep your eyes open for wherever you saw that and
locate.
maybe
Yeah, I'll see if I can locate.
Yeah, that sounds like a valuable.
Because I remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah, all these little things we can use against.
All right.
I yield.
All right. Thank you, Gary. Continuing on.
Shorty's got something to say.
Say what?
Shorty's got something to say.
Shorty from Missouri. Go ahead, jump in, Shorty.
As an Amish, we don't do picture IDs.
Who's we?
The Amish communities.
The Amish community does not do picture ID. You're kind of muffled. Maybe you can hold your phone a little bit farther away from your mouth or something. Amish community don't do picture ID. What do they do?
They don't do picture IDs.
Yeah, you said that. What do they do for
They don't
identification?
have IDs.
Their self.
Right.
What'd you say? Just
They
word of
just
mouth?
use their self, their word of mouth. You know, I am who I say I am, or I'm not. Make up your mind. I've already made up mine.
Well, they probably have witnesses for each other.
Yeah. Mothers, father, you know, brothers.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that would be adequate too, and we could get over to that. We could issue our own identification. 2 affidavits is proof if it's not contested in a court of law. And so if any of us have 2 affidavits from any other person, that is prima facie evidence of the conclusiveness of the evidence. Unless somebody else submits an affidavit saying that that's a lie, then it's contested. But if there's nobody swearing that you're a liar about who you claim to be, and you got 2 affidavits, especially with a picture on it and stuff like that, then that's a legitimate identification card. And I dare suggest from sovereign common law jurisdiction, it would also function as a passport. But that's some pretty bold stuff, and we got a lot on the table here. Let's continue on, please, because calling that Cynthia Moore is not here to prosecute her case, and Lewis, is Lewis or anybody representing his black community that are concerned about this Dred Scott versus Stanford case? Is Lewis or any other black person here that's concerned about Lewis's Dred Scott versus Stanford case? Anybody? Hearing none. And then we jump on over to the last case in our series that's officially on our agenda list, Chris Cave from Nevada. Chris, can you please give us an update on what you're doing with your case, the progress that's coming along with it? I understand you just passed a major hurdle here. You got a big stack of paperwork completed and in the mail. Can you give us an update there?
Well, let's call it the hostile environment that I'm encountering here in the federal courts in Las Vegas is just beyond the pale. It's like I have adversaries there, but both the opposing counsel and the court working together. There's a magistrate judge who is tyrannically refusing to recuse herself in spite of the fact that I provided a case number where she showed particular discriminatory, retaliatory, class-based animus against myself in particular, which destroys any appearance of fairness, neutrality, or the ability to act without animus against myself. She accused me blatantly in their federal court library of being a barred licensed attorney and amended my bar number, which I have none because I've never belonged to the bar. I was there as a pro bono witness, observer, and documenter of what was going on in that particular matter for somebody else, and had that experience with her. And she is obviously in the pockets. Las Vegas courts here are known for having wide open pockets. That means the judges are open to taking bribes. And some of them are actually under the control of the state actors, county commission actors, and are obviously receiving unjust compensation and therefore are very likely involved in protecting the corporate licensees that run the county here and the agents of government that are abusing their discretion violently, ultra-virus as it is. And I have a grand jury complaint that I'm still deciding where to put it in. Now, I had the clerk of the court down there last week who himself, whenever I asked him about getting a letter to the ex officio clerk for the federal grand jury, told me that I had to put my complaint through the U.S. Attorney's Office to do that. And I find that antithetical because the grand jury is a separate and supposedly independent agency without the federal court system, although they operate in the same building, supposedly. They are supposed to be independent of the judiciary and the bar, and just an agent of we the people in order to hear these complaints whenever those bad actors have acted outside scope, fear, and color of law. I also put in a document to the actual judge in the case, and I have not received an answer from him, my opposition and my request for reconsideration of the dismissal of a key individual in the case that cannot be dismissed. They did a copy-paste carbon copy of the two different supposedly separated parties, which are working clearly in league together, because one had copy pasted word for word except the names in the so-called 12B6 that they had put in, and I noted that with particularity. And so, you know, in this case, they bifurcate the case to duplicitously increase and double workload for myself, which has no assistant counsel whatsoever. I don't have a clerk. I don't have an office. I don't have a case management plan. I'm just one man, along with help from above, fighting against the principalities of evil with everything I have, trying to receive justice in an unjust situation. And that's pretty much where I'm at right now. I am putting together right now a memorandum of understanding to educate clerk to their duties, and citing several different Title 18 violations they have when they obstruct access to the grand jury and try to force you to go to a barred licensed attorney esquire, which is not fair, neutral, and unbiased, because as others have pointed out on this call, they're in a seditious conspiracy to undermine the government, the Republic of the United States of America, and we the people, and have basically seized control of the whole federal judicial court system, therefore making it a weaponized offensive attack on we the people. And we're seeing this carried out by the extreme rump so-called Supreme Court, which has been taken over, and with compromised judge that's at the top of that thing, Roberts. Yeah. He is obviously involved in pedophilia on a global basis, therefore is compromised and unable to enforce the will of the people, and subjugated himself by being compromised by his pedophilic co-practitioner. And that's where I'm at.
Thank you, Chris. Comments or questions to Chris here on his case?
If I may, this is David. Well, first of all, I don't know who's got music going on in the background, but it does offer some distraction to me personally. But I was going to ask Chris if he has any knowledge to the 18 USC section 3332 regarding this federal special grand jury. Chris?
I hear you. I was not familiar with that citation, but I am looking through some documents now, and the 3332, a special federal grand jury, is exactly what I have articulated in writing without having that reference, which I will certainly look up and avail myself of the aspects there too. Thank you.
Well, let me tell you what it does. It basically says it gives instruction to the U.S. attorney or any federal prosecutor, as the statute is referencing, and it basically gives them the mandate under law that if any such citizen comes to them with first of all, it comes in two parts. First part says that the special grand jury has the duty to inquire about, give us your crimes for this district. They have the duty. So there's an outstanding call for crimes to be reported to them. Then the second part of that statute, that code, basically tells the U.S. prosecutor or any federal prosecutor that they have the job of bringing bringing crimes to the special, reports of crime to the special grand jury, even by the public. And so they have the job of, if you go to the prosecutor, now I've done this in Michigan, and there's a caveat to this, but if you, as any member of the public, the population, goes to report a crime that's occurred within that district, and you take it to the U.S. attorney and you tell them that you want to go to take this to the special grand jury, they have the duty to do that. One of the caveats is that they have the job to do that. So they're supposed to take you and your report of the crime to the special grand jury, and then they're supposed to also give their opinion as to whether or not what should be done or could be done, and they give that as well. But they're supposed to bring your report to the grand jury. What I found that they do in Michigan to cover this stuff up and to keep you away from it, keep me away from it, is that they tell you, you go to the U.S. attorney and you say you want this. I've even cited 18 U.S.C. section 3332 and demanded access. And they've told me to go to the FBI and to get an investigation done first. They've just shined me on and done nothing. I'm saying we'll get back with you later, and then they never do. This type of thing. So this is what to be aware of, but that statute does make it incumbent upon them to do exactly that. I yield.
I do know, Dave, and I appreciate your comments relative to that, and I've seen evidence of that also. I had actually contacted the U.S. Marshal early on in this egregious abuse of deadly force against myself and Title 18 U.S.C. 1117, conspiracy to commit murder, and other crimes also. And I tried to contact, I wasn't comfortable with the FBI because I've observed the criminal aspects of them for quite a long time. That's back when Comey was the head of the FBI, and I explained to the U.S. Marshal that I had no confidence in their ability to do anything. He wanted to know why I hadn't taken it there. They were actually involved in my false arrest and ambush interviews posed as going to investigate crimes, and they had targeted me also. And the state itself is also involved, so I feel like it's really critical that I remove this case out of Las Vegas and Nevada in general, perhaps to the Southern District of California, San Diego Division, where they investigated the Puana versus Kealoha case over there in Honolulu, Hawaii, which is substantially similar, although the San Francisco FBI also did the Luis Huizar case up there, one of the city councilmen who abused his governmental powers. And so they seem to be very selective in what cases they'll take, discriminatory perhaps because they don't like to take conservatives or Christians cases. They want strictly other classes of people that have a specific interest in them prosecuting, as opposed to being equal access to justice. There's selective access to justice. But these are things that I have certainly noticed and taking part in, and that's kind of why I'm trying. I appreciate your contribution there on that. In fact, I even have a copy of a U.S. federal grand jury complaint with 3 different individuals. The last one's Pauline Nally in the District of Georgia. I also have one I have on my front page that we're talking about. If I'll go back to the front of it here where I was at before I started talking. This is from the so-called Unified United States Common Law Grand Juries in Bahia, New York, and We the People of that district that has some very useful information in it that I'm using in a copy and paste to assemble my documents. But I'm always glad to take and entertain or communicate with others who are trying to defend against these criminals masquerading as public servants, imposturing, if you will, and therefore they are violating Title 18 U.S.C. 1346 and failing to provide honest services. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Are we good, everybody?
Yep.
All right. So Chris has explained a lot of background about his case, and David's explained a lot of background about his case. I believe Michael Zarzano has just joined with us. Michael, are you there? Michael, are you muted?
Yeah, I'm here.
All right. We kind of skipped over. Paul was here earlier, but he had to leave early, and so we kind of skipped over the case agenda item for you and him talking about progress with the grand juries. Would you like to give us a progress report on what you and Paul are doing with the grand juries and the voter fraud issue?
Oh, sure. On April 19th, we were on the live show on American Media Periscope, which is a nationwide network. It's viewed by about 10 million people every month. Paul had technical problems with his camera, so he wasn't able to participate. But I did the show for about 30 minutes. You can watch it on our website, countycongress.com. It's called Operation Grand Jury. And I think I'm on the last half hour. And we basically covered what we're doing is providing a way for the public to petition for a special grand jury about the conspiracy in the election. And 8 different states, and they can download the petition for a federal grand jury in the district courts in the 8 different states. And we had a huge response. As soon as I went on the air and started giving out the website address, we have a map that shows traffic activity, and the whole nation lit up with dots showing, people logging onto the website. And in a very short time, we had 2,000 people on the site, and we've had a bunch of downloads, lots of emails, phone calls coming in. So there's a huge amount of interest in doing this action. And last night I was on a Zoom conference and had the opportunity to speak with Patrick Byrne. And he seemed to be pretty interested in it and asked me to elaborate on it on the call. So that was a real interesting experience. If anybody's not aware of who Patrick Byrne is, he was privy to the conversation in the White House. He was in the room with Michael Flynn and Sidney Powell, President Trump, and he's now part of a nationwide network of resistance to find remedy and justice in the election. And it's very exciting times that we're living in, and the judicial baby is not dead in the bathwater called swamp. It's probably on its last breath, but there is some justice still being obtained in the courts. It might be few and far between, but it is some still there. And that's what we're hoping to achieve, Paul and I, with this effort. And we're supposed to be back on the show again very soon. And Paul, we're hopefully going to get Paul's technical situation resolved, because you could see Paul, but you couldn't hear his audio, and he's not sure what happened, but we hope to be able to figure it out. That's pretty much it. There's just a lot of activity growing out in Arizona too, by the way, that I think is going to lead to a lot of criminal activity being exposed. And once that happens, hopefully the grand jury petition will get recognized, and we can spend our own tax dollars investigating the crime in Arizona, and hopefully in Georgia as well. I yield. That's pretty much it.
Thank you, Michael. Is there any comments? Is there any comments or questions in response to Michael's presentation there? Anybody? Hearing none. That's pretty much concluding our list of cases before our court. I have promised John Root here an opportunity to delve into a subject. I kind of forget it now. I think it's about economics. But before we jump to John there's a quick agenda item 4, which has subsection 1 with Gary Bergman. I'd like to invite Gary. Gary has been doing quite a bit of research in a number of areas, and currently here, I believe Gary is involved in researching our American economic system and how it has been kidnapped and hijacked by the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund. Gary, are you up to giving us a brief presentation on what your research is covering there?
Well, I would like to do more intensive next week or next meeting, because that live show we did at this Wild West event kind of kept me behind.
Okay.
But basically, we did a 3-part series. We did a 3-part series over our radio station, and we started off, which I think was the one that blew everybody. It was the congressional report that the IMF has to do yearly, and how we have 16% control, and we pay in the most to that thing, and how there was trillions of dollars at the end of 2019 to be used for this COVID pandemic.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, it kind of laid out in the congressional records that was already pre-established, and then it tells how much money was made available for this emergency fund for this coronavirus. I mean, it was already, they knew it was happening. But I'll cover more of it, give you more stuff that we got off their site next meeting, if you could.
All right. I'll reschedule you for our next conference then. And at that point, I think we can move on to the conversation I promised John there a little bit ago. John, would you like to take the lead there and refresh us on that issue that we were talking about a little bit earlier?
Sure. The background to what I want to talk about is that on the one hand, holding the de facto to account is always very worthwhile as an educational effort. But in my experience, the amount of success that we have is very, very small. I'm waiting for someday when somebody who claims that they've accessed their account isn't under a non-disclosure agreement so that they can tell me what they actually managed to get. Anyway, or that they actually managed to monetize one of these liens, or that, So what I'm getting at and what I'm thinking about ongoing is that at the same time that we're trying to hold the de facto to account and avail ourselves of the remedies that it provides, which always seems to be, trapdoors and hurdles and the next thing. Anyway, I'm saying that for a reason, not that I don't think that it's a worthwhile endeavor. We also need to be creating what it is that we actually want. And so there's 2 levels to that. One is from a practical point of view, what are the available things? So one of the groups that I also follow is the One Small Town that Michael Tellinger is working on, and the Common Good Payment System, and the Dynamic Governance group called Sociocracy for All, and the why can't I think of their name? The Metacurrency Project, various other groups that are working at the same sort of foundational level to develop the ideas and the practices that we need to become sovereign. So my basic point is that if we're sitting together in the neighborhoods where we live, or even in virtual communities such as this, and we've understood that money is not something in itself. It's like, how's the best way to describe that it isn't? It's like saying that you could buy and sell hours and minutes in order to influence them, make everybody's minutes go faster or slower, or that you could buy extra days for the calendar. It's kind of similar to that idea that you have to buy and that you can buy and sell money. It isn't money if you can do that. It's a control mechanism. So once we've understood that money is an agreement, that it's a social technology, that it's something that it's a matter of law, that it is always, regardless of what it's supposedly backed by, it's always a fiat of the sovereign. It's always what the sovereign uses to create the conditions in which we live. And if we don't know who's creating the conditions in which we're living, because it doesn't make any sense, right? Then find out who's issuing the money and what they're issuing it for. And if you do that, then you discover who's sovereign. So if we're going to be sovereign, we have to learn how to issue the money. And then the question arises, how do you go about that? How do you, we need to give the jural assemblies that we're working on building. We have a little one in Massachusetts. And our little jural assemblies, there's, a reasonably substantial one in Pennsylvania and Michigan, and there's one out in Oregon, and there are quite a few in the whole Anna Van Rights effort. But each one of those, if it were to address the issue, what is money? Right? Money is something that we agree to use in order to facilitate the exchange of the goods and services that are actually valuable. It's no different than having a clock or a watch in order to take advantage of time. It's no different than having a ruler to take advantage of inches, or an odometer to take advantage of miles. So the unit is available. There's a unit. Everybody knows what an inch is. Everybody knows what an hour is. Everybody in the whole world knows what a dollar's worth. So there's no reason not to use the dollar as the unit of value and not use the dollar as a means of exchange. We create, simply on the basis of an agreement among us, to issue our own currency. In the USA Republic, we are in the process of deciding how to issue the replic. In common good, we issue common good. There are various other currencies which one can issue. And if we do that, if we both create the kind of governance that Charles has outlined so well, with the qualified elector and the jural assembly and the tens and the hundreds and the thousands and the 100,000s, etc., the organic hierarchies. This is a very interesting paper for anybody who's looking at their screen, and it's then we are and we agree that issuing the money is the primary tool that the sovereign uses. Then we are at the same time that we're understanding how we've been duped. We're creating what it is that we actually want. And if we're in the process of creating what we actually want, then we're asking each other the question, who are you? Right? What inspires you? What do you need in order to be able to be all that you are capable of being. You know, what is your relationship to the community? What would you like to do for your fellow men? What would you like to do to make the better world? And if we have that orientation, and we know that we can issue the money to fund everything and anything that we agree would be good, because the money isn't valuable, it's the thing that we're doing. It's what we apply, our spirit, our energy, our labor, our ability to cooperate with each other. It's whatever we do like that that's the thing that's actually valuable. And the money only ever represents that value. If I describe to you what it is that I would like to do that would make our community better, and I tell you how much it costs, and you issue that money so that I can do it, or so that the group of us who want to do it can do it, or the county can do it, or the state can do it, or the whole nation can do it, then the power of the money is overcome, because there can't be a shortage of money. Money cannot be scarce. The only thing that can be scarce is good ideas and people willing to implement them. And guess what? There's no shortage of good ideas and people with the energy to implement them. So that's what I'm working on. And I'm involved with the republics instead of, maybe one of these other things, because it's so important to understand the issue of sovereignty. And it's only the republics, it's only the common law people, it's only the people involved in these efforts that understand that. It's up to us. It's our common sense of justice that will allow us to create paradise on earth, or the New Jerusalem, whatever you want to call it. I yield.
Thank you, John. I love your positive attitude. You're an upbeat kind of guy. You're seeing light at the end of the tunnel, and you're sharing that with everybody that's with us. And frequently, a lot of us get a little bit gloomy about the monolithic monster and that is oppressing all of our people. So thank you for that excellent presentation. Are there comments or questions from anybody in follow-up to what John presented there? Anybody?
Oh, I just was going to ask about how to get a copy of that organic hierarchies, but I see he put a link in. Never mind.
It's there. It's all. You go spend some time on Charles's website. It's an education.
I put the link to that document in the web window after.
And there's also Gemstone University, which is really good as well.
Yeah.
Awesome. I'll be reading it later. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Dean. I get Dean. Well, could you take a moment to introduce yourself here? You're kind of new to our group.
Sure. My name's Dean Phillips. Well, that's not my name, but that's the name that's been ascribed to me. I'm not even sure why I'm here or how Charles got a hold of me, but somehow or another I am here. Definitely interested in fixing what I see as problematic, and I personally have some of my own issues I'm currently now dealing with these courts and local police officers and whatnot. And anyway, I like everything I've heard here. I just haven't said much because I don't really know a whole lot of what everybody's dealing with, and just trying to get accustomed to what all is going on and what this is about. All right. I don't know if you guys want to know any more about me. I don't want to waste a lot of time here on that, but I know we've all got issues, it sounds like. So,
if I may, actually the most important thing in creating the new community or the New Jerusalem is getting to know each other. So if you know who I am and I know something about who you are, then I will be able to make a judgment, and you will be able to make a judgment about what I have to do with you. And once that's the case throughout the community, I know who you are. I have a good sense for what you're inspired by, what we as a community can rely on you to do. And I've been able to talk with you about what I have to do with you. How does my mission relate to your mission? Right? What might we cooperate with? It's only at that moment, it's only when that's happened to a real extent in the community that the community can ask, what do we want? It can only ask and have it be real when we know who's there. We know what each other is reliable for. We've understood who we are. We know what we have to do with each other, so that when we ask the question, what do we want? What kind of society do we want to build together? It's substantial. It's real. It'll happen. And if you remember that consciousness precedes matter, anybody who's familiar with the whole idea of manifestation, anybody who's read Napoleon Hill, for example, anyone who's aware of the spiritual battle, they know that it's our consciousness that's creating the reality that we're living in. So if we can create a common consciousness, because we've heard your story, right? And you've heard something of mine. You know something about what I'm all about and what I'm reliable for. We need to be doing that all the time. And then when we ask the question, what do we want? There's substance to it. And when we come to a consensus about what we want, there's a real will behind it. And if we issue the money to fund it, there's nothing in our way. There's nothing can stop us.
I love you.
Sounds good to me. I have to say, though, there's seems to be too few and far between of this kind of thinking in my world. Anyway, I just don't know many people around that get this, that can see that there's an issue, that can, I mean, for me, growing up in the 70s, I remember what a big deal it was. And the idea of making us pledge allegiance to the flag, liberty and justice for all, that's a lie. That's not what we live in. And I'm scratching my head trying to figure out how and why other people don't see that or aren't as, as incensed about it as I am. I mean, that baffles me.
Right.
And,
Hey,
Sure.
Mike, is that you, Michael? Who is it asking?
I refuse to pledge allegiance. I won't pledge allegiance to this country's flag. It's bloody. It's guilty of shedding innocent blood, and I can't pledge it anymore. So that problem is solved for me. But the person that was on a while back that said that wasn't his name. Did you give a fake name?
Dean.
that wasn't me.
Well, I think you made a caveat. I think you're referring to God's name for you or something like that. Dean Phillips is.
Oh, right. Yeah. Well, the name, it's a tricky thing. You know that. If anybody's been down this road, and they've probably looked into some of that, the birth certificate and I've been studying this for 10 years, trying to figure out a way to protect myself from this government designed to protect us, which is really a bizarre thing. I still get baffled.
Yep.
So,
Okay, so I guess my point was, is that your name?
that's the given name that my parents gave me. Yes.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if you were using like a pen
Oh,
name.
no. No, nothing like that. But there's that whole thing is whether or not I actually own it, because if it's on the birth certificate and the Social Security number, doesn't the government technically own it? Not really me. Do I want to claim it? Blah, 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 blah. I mean, we can go round and round about all this stuff, but.
Yeah, and that's the point I wanted to talk about. We seem to be like a dog chasing its tail. I really think we don't have time to spend resettling resettling our counties, and I don't know. I just see this movement as a bunch of time wasters. I think real boots on the ground needs to occur. People need to get involved in their counties and join together in force and numbers, and start working out your problems yourself at your local county level, your precinct level. Trying to reinvent the wheel is going to take too long. Somebody mentioned, there's a General Assembly out in this state or that state. Out in Massachusetts, there's one. And this has been going on for years and years. National Assembly, 10 years? And they've got nothing accomplished. They're censoring people on their calls. Destry, Roger Dowdell, Paul, that whole bunch with Michigan National Assembly, they're a bunch of frauds. And they've just been wasting time all these years, going nowhere, playing government, acting like they're big shots. I think it's a joke. I yield.
Thank you. Thank you, Michael. Comments, questions, anybody?
Yeah, well, that's my point. It's this question of what is it that we need to understand that would allow us to create what it is that we want? And to my feeling, there are two things. One is what is available to us in the way of an understanding of our own nature that would allow us to often and relatively easily get to consensus about what we would like to see happen and what we could make happen. And do we understand money, and that there is no obstacle to issuing money as soon as people understand that it's an agreement, it's a social technology. And there's just as a little example so that you can appreciate what I'm saying, there is billions and billions of dollars of commerce being done by business-to-business barter associations, where they use the dollar as the unit of value, because we all know what a dollar is worth, but they don't use the dollar for exchange. Dollars are scarce. No, you create the dollars in order to effect the exchange that you want to make. It's that simple. Once that penny drops with enough people, then all of the technology that we need in order to do it really straightforward, simply, and securely exists, is available, free of charge. And all of the things that we need in order to understand how to govern ourselves and how to relate to each other, all of that social technology is available, free of charge. And we would be able to create heaven on earth, or paradise, or whatever it is. And we must remember, or in some way take very seriously, that this is also a spiritual battle. It's a battle in heaven as well as on earth. And so if we call on the better angels of our nature ongoing, we'll be in a much better position. We'll have a much stronger sense. And if you think that how shall I put it? The way that religion has been used against us over time, with all of the factionalism, and you're not in the right religion, and we got to do something about those people who believe differently. That whole thing is a distraction from the actual common experience that we have of being inspired by the power that's greater than us. Imagine if we were able to create something like Alcoholics Anonymous based on that kind of consciousness. And I'm not.
If I may ask you,
then we would be somewhere. Go.
May I? Thank you. What higher power are you referring to?
Okay, so the thing that I'm getting at is that if you notice that there's always the opportunity to observe yourself thinking, right? You always have the opportunity.
No, I asked.
I'm getting there.
If I may, point of order. Okay, I asked a specific question. What higher power are you referring to? Could you just please answer that quickly and simply?
No.
Without a dissertation?
No.
Okay, thank you. I yield.
Okay.
The problem is there isn't a simple answer to it.
Well, I think some of us Christians might think there's a bit more simple and direct answer, but I'm inclined to believe your definition is a little bit more broad than that, and mine is really too, John.
I know.
But I do think even the essence of your answer might be encapsulated pretty briefly if you really worked on it there. You don't think you're capable of doing a brief, short answer for Michael there?
I was going to.
Well, go ahead and try to whip it out for us if you can there.
So the way that I would characterize it for simplicity is that all of us have the experience of being spiritual beings having a human experience. So what is that spirit? Well, everybody has their own religion. Everybody relates to the source of their inspiration slightly differently. And so I'm suggesting that it's my eternal being as part of the general humanity on the other side of the threshold of death, right? In communication with the hierarchies, with my angels, with the archangels, with the archai, all the way up to the seraphim and the cherubim. So the whole way in which we're embedded in the much larger universe, so that we're able to ask ourselves, what do I want to let in? What do I want to be inspired by? And the reason that we can do that is that there's always a gap between the experience that the world gives us, that our body gives us, that our senses give us, that our education, the culture give us, and our response to it, our interpretation of its significance. We give it meaning with the concepts that we use to understand it. And that's the actual realm of our freedom. Nobody can take that away from you, that opportunity to recognize that there's a gap between the experience and the way in which you understand it, the interpretation. What am I going to use in order to understand the experiences that I have so that I have genuine agency, so that it brings me joy, so that I understand what I need to do, and so that I'm deciding what's influencing me and what I'm going to live my life out of. And that's why it wasn't a simple question. And everything in all the religions of the world, in one way or another, talk about that. And my particular orientation is that the Christ is the human archetype. The Christ is the archetype of the human being. And by archetype, I mean the example that we can emulate. And if you just read the red letters of the Bible, just what Christ said, and as ridiculous and arrogant as it may seem, say it as though you are saying it. And then when we say, Christ in you, may he fill your spirit. It's real. I yield.
Thank you, John. I do love your positive attitude, John. You've got one of the best positive attitudes of anybody in this movement. Somebody, thank you. Was that you, Chris? Yeah.
I certainly approve of John's attitude. He's a great asset.
Thank you, Chris. I think John was responding to Dean there about building community on the names issue, and I wanted to build on that a little bit because and it relates to economics, just like John is saying, because it all gets down to a specific concept in the law known as trust.
Yeah.
TRU. There's volumes and volumes in the law libraries. There's whole shelves devoted to the laws of trust. Okay? And that's the essence of our common law communities. At the 10 household township level, that's a community of trust, right at the grassroots. And once the people get to know each other, given their real names, like Dean Phillips did, Michael was appropriately concerned because Dean worded it kind of ambiguously there and put a caveat therein that Michael misinterpreted, like Dean is not given his real name. But when Dean clarified that enables Michael and all the rest of us to come to a greater level of trust with Dean. Okay, Dean Phillips really is Dean Phillips. That's the way he was born, and he's not changing his name around to escape, federal convictions for being an axe murderer or something. So it's about building our communities of trust. And even smaller, the township level of 10 households is actually even that's a significant assembly of 10 individual stakeholders. I like that term, stakeholders. It kind of comes in from the left wing, but they are stakeholders. There's a similar term called burden holders. That's more of a common law term because in the common law community, the people that made their tithing donations to the town treasury, the tithing group treasury, the town constables, the tithing man, they're burden holders. They have duties to contribute to the welfare of the community. So they're stakeholders, they're burden holders, and they're credible, they're stable people in the community that are worthy of trust within that community. And when we produce documents in each of our local communities from the township level and or the precinct level, identifying people, we can issue our own picture ID documents that can function as passports and driver's competency certification traveling on the public highways. We can do all of that from the grassroots level, certified on our own trust of our own fellows. Okay, we can all issue affidavits that we trust John Root and Chris Cave and David Scheid and Michael Zarzano and everybody else. We can issue and two witnesses. If you've got two affidavits showing that you are the person that you claim to be, that's proof beyond a reasonable doubt, unless the only exception is if somebody else swears out an affidavit accusing you of being a liar and your two witnesses. Okay. Otherwise, it stands as a matter of common law due process, and that creates a presumption before the court that you really are who you say you are, and you can move forward with that. And you should be able to put that, use that as identification to cops on the street and judicial officers that are calling you into court. That should be enough. The central municipal control of issuance of identification documents, that's one of the biggest areas where we can make immediate progress by issuing our own identification documents and issue a line of credit right along with it. We could put all of that together real quick and efficient once we get our conferencing systems down good and we get our community of people coming together and we're all singing the same tune. We're all on the same page. We're marching to the same music. We got the same agenda. We are a community of trust. Okay, we trust each other. We've each listened to everybody talk enough to know that, yeah, these seem like pretty good, stable people. And if one of us goes axe murderer or crazy further on down the road, well, we will call for a vote of confidence in his qualified elector status. We will promptly exclude him from the group, and we will find somebody else to fill his place. There's lots of people that would start joining in with us if we do it at a superior level of integrity over and above what Anna von Reitz and Destry and all the other dysfunctional organizing efforts are doing. We can do it better because we got a deeper understanding of what the qualified elector status is and what the township community organizing process really is. Those other people, they never talk about those kind of things. So we've got a lot of positive energy here, and I'm really delighted with our small group, and I'm real optimistic, similarly to John, that we can build something real quick and efficient. And Michael, and everybody, I disagree with almost everybody on at least something. You, John, on a few things, but Michael, your issue about we don't have time. Yeah, I've quibbled with you about this before. We don't have time to do it wrong. And with all due respect, Michael, you're frequently talking. You're saying we don't have time, so we got to go ahead and jump up and do something now. That's wrong. It's the wrong way to organize. It's the wrong way to have solid political impact under constitutional common law. And so you're throwing the baby out with the bathwater. With all due respect, in your big rush concerns to get something up and running, but you're ignoring how to do it right. And I don't think it's going to take more than 10 or 20% more time to do it right from the grassroots bottom up than what you're talking about rushing out and just making committees and signing petitions and stuff. And Michael, you're welcome to respond if you like, or I yield at this juncture.
Yes, Michael, I strongly disagree. I yield.
Okay, but no counter argument. That's good. Anybody else have any?
I wanted to just mention that the key to the trust. There's a lot of history, as you pointed out, but the key to the trust is knowing each other. And if we were to spend time getting to know each other so that we had a sense for what we're trustworthy for, in our General Assembly in Massachusetts, we have tremendous arguments. I mean, we're just all. I mean, there's no. I don't think any of us agree to the extent that you would hope, right? But there's tremendous trust, and the reason that there's trust is that we've gotten to know each other well, and to trust each other, and all of that has to do with our dedication to the purpose that has brought us together. It isn't our affection for each other that brought us together. It's the purpose. And the purpose of our General Assembly in Massachusetts is to create the better world that we all know in our hearts is possible. So if the leader of the group is the purpose that brings us together, then we don't need a person to be the leader. And we can learn how to rely on what we've understood about what each of us is responsible for. And we had a wonderful experience of deciding who, or recognizing, not deciding, of recognizing who in our group was the notary or the scribe or the facilitator, or the community builder, or the sheriff. It was a wonderful, eye-opening, heart-opening experience. And that is what it takes to self-govern. That's what has to happen at the grassroots level. And let's figure out what the bell that we want to ring is, right? The bell, the Liberty Bell that we want to ring. So that the people who hear that, the goal that we're after, the purpose that we want to accomplish, that actually brings us together. It's the orientation towards the Spirit that brings the souls together, that brings the people together. I see the same thing that you see, and that's what I want to dedicate myself to. So figuring out what the purpose we do know what the purpose. This group hasn't got that problem, but the the way in which everybody interprets it and understands it needs to be worked through so that there's real personal substance. And Brad might say something about whether he agrees about our General Assembly in Massachusetts. Sorry, Brad. Shouldn't do that to you.
All right. Is Brad with us here? Brad, are you here?
Yeah, he's here.
All right. You want to jump in, Brad?
Nope.
Okay. It looked like Dean had to leave with us here. Comments or questions? Anybody else? Hearing none. Scrolling on with our agenda here.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Who's talking, please?
Okay. This is Gregory Williams, sometimes known as Brother Gregory. I knew you from years ago.
Yeah, Gregory, good to have you with us.
I was going through cleaning out one of my old emails that I don't use much, and I saw I was invited to this call. And
yes.
So I came in early and been just sitting listening because I haven't been coming on this call. I don't know when we talked last. It was an awful long time ago, it seems like. But anyway, I just wanted to make a couple of comments about some of the terms and things that people have mentioned. I don't want to take up you guys' time, and I actually have another call coming up here pretty soon that is our network call. We have a network as well. We've been trying to organize people in the tens, hundreds, and thousands for a long time. And according to, just briefly, for those of you who don't know me, you can read more about me at hisholychurch.org or preparingyou.com. Those are our two main sites. We actually have dozens of sites, but and lots of different people adding to them. I couldn't even tell you all of them. But we've been, I was up in the area where Charles is with guys like, Quaid and John Joseph years ago and Paul Revere years ago. But we're down here in Oregon, in Summer Lake, in the high deserts in Lake County. And we're doing both of what I guess Brad's kind of talking about and what Charles is talking about. And maybe what, I guess it's John, the positive talker guy. I don't know what his last name is. Was that John, his first name?
Yep,
Yeah.
John Root.
John Root.
Yeah.
Is that R? How do you spell that last name?
R-O-O-T.
Oh, okay. Because there's a Root also, R-O-O-D. That's not you. But anyway, I see Abraham, Moses, and Jesus Christ coming upon the world that was just about as much mess as we are in today. And they came to set the captive free, and they required that people sit down in the tens, hundreds, and thousands and practice what they called religion. But what we call religion is not what we called religion 200 years ago in America, and certainly not what they called religion 2,000 years ago. 200 years ago, religion was defined as the pious performance of your duty to God and your fellow man. Somebody asked, what God are we talking about? Well, I think there's the divine intelligence in creation, so that's the God I'm talking about. I'm not going to give him a name or anything. But the pious performance of your duty to your fellow man is what creates trust with your fellow man.
Yeah.
What the early Christians were doing, what the early people following Abraham were doing, what the people who were following Moses were doing was taking care of one another during hard times. And we're about to see some hard times. We haven't seen them yet, but I think they're maybe coming up. And that was one of the things. The Christian church was organized in the tens, hundreds, and thousands. There was nobody in it who could exercise authority one over the other. But that created trust, which they were going to need because they had runaway inflation, because they took all the silver out of the Roman silver coin. They had food shortages. They had all the same things that we're about to have in spades. At the same token, one of my sons is the local county commissioner. We live in one of the most conservative counties in Oregon, which is not saying much because most of Oregon's not very conservative. My sons, none of my sons or daughters ever went to public school. None of them have ever had a vaccination. Some of them have taught in universities but never been to a public school before. All of them are successful. Three of them actually work for the government and are in positions of pretty sizable authority for where they work. And they want to organize the people in the tens, hundreds, and thousands as well and take back their responsibilities, because that's how you get your rights back. And you do it individually, but you also do it together. I wouldn't say collectively, but like I say, in the tens, hundreds, and thousands. It's a voluntary society, and that's what Christ was creating. That's what Moses was creating. That's what Abraham was creating. And we write about that. We give all our books away for free. I mean, at least online. I can't print you one for free, but they're all available for free. Got hundreds of audios, and I think we could give you a lot of insight into how to organize. We might use some different terminology than some of the common law stuff, but the first book I wrote, which I don't know if Charles ever read it, but Covenants of the Gods. And of course, gods are just ruling judges. That's what the word means. And you either have a God in heaven or you have gods on earth. You either live by faith, hope, and charity, taking care of one another because you care about one another, building that trust, or you take care of one another through force, fear, and fealty. I think we've been doing a lot of the latter and not enough of the former. And that's why we're in the mess that we're in today. Well, that's about as much as I want to bore you with, so I'll yield. You can ask me a question. You know how to get a hold of me. But anyway, I thank Charles for the opportunity. I don't know, he may have been sending me stuff right along, but this is the first time I've seen it in a long time. So anyway, I yield.
Thank you, Gregory. Your insight is precious. I'm glad you're sharing. And I used a different email address on some of the ones that I sent out earlier today. I used a Yahoo account instead of my ProtonMail account. So maybe somehow your spam blocker or something is blocking the announcements from my ProtonMail account. You might want to check that.
An email that I don't usually check. That was we were attacked by all kinds of people over the years, and that email, I've kept it, but I don't really monitor it very closely. But a lot of the spam that we used to get has now been removed, or just died away, and so I may reactivate it and start looking at it more frequently. So I may, if you use that email, I may be seeing you.
Okay. Well, I do hope that you continue joining with us in our conferences here, because I know your work, and I don't recall if I read the specific document that you mentioned, but I know I've read a lot of your work, and I've always admired the basic strategy that you're putting together there. I think we do have a few quibbles, like I've got with John and numerous others. It's really hard to maintain 100% complete consensus with anybody, but we can usually put our. Yeah.
I don't trust anybody who says they agree with me 100%.
Yeah, right.
There we go. All right. Well, definitely a very warm invitation to return here, Brother Gregory, and I do hope you can hang with us for at least a little while as our discussion continues to unfold. I think where we touched on the issue of trust, that seems to be a nice broad-based issue that all of us can plug into, and we should be able to build a consensus around how that social dynamic process should be applied to our modern organizing efforts in light of our common law Christian traditions here. So we've got a whole lot to work with here.
Can I ask a quick question? Because I haven't been on this forum before. Evidently, to be heard, you push *6. Is that what you push to go back on mute?
Yeah.
I think that probably works. There's a little microphone at the bar. Well, okay, you're only in by telephone.
Hard line.
Yeah, you're on the phone. Okay.
On the hard line.
Yeah, I imagine *6 will
So
mute you.
I'll push the *6 and I'll go back on mute unless somebody wants to ask me. You can just call on me, but I'll let you. I'll stay on as long as I can, but I do have another call coming up. But thank you.
All right, thank you, Gregory. Comments, questions, further thoughts? Anybody?
Just Chris observes that Brother Gregory is very well known in the circles of truth, liberty, freedom, and honesty, and we're certainly glad to have him back on our channel here, and thank him for blessing us with his presence.
Thank you, Chris.
I'll second that.
Yeah. Yeah. Very warm welcome here, Gregory. Thank you for joining with us. Your reputation has preceded you. You've been in this battle a long time. John, do you have a comment?
I have to mute and talk to my wife a minute. How long are we going for?
We usually do conclude our business meeting at the 2-hour mark, and then we hang on for further discussion. I guess we've gone past 2 hours here. We can call a conclusion here if you need to cut and run, John. At least to our business meeting.
I'll stay on for a little longer.
Okay.
I'm afraid that I will have to go soon. I've got to get dinner and things like that.
Okay, David. Duly cognizant of that. I would like to go ahead and jump into agenda item 5 here, where we're talking about recruiting town constable level peace officers, as well as our grassroots level qualified electors. It's important that in agenda item 5, I delve into some of this. These are, in my comprehension, maybe Gregory can correct me if his insight or anybody else's insight can show me an error, but I believe the essence of Christian common law is that the closer you get to the grassroots, the more power you've got. Okay? And a common law town constable peace officer, he can go anywhere in the nation and arrest anybody if he's got, quote, probable cause to form the belief that a crime has been committed, unquote. Okay? That's a tremendous amount of power. And technically speaking, in statutes, we've got the right of citizen's arrest, which is similar, but that's less solid in terms of real constitutional common law. Bringing in the bedrock of the constitutional common law is it really gets solidity when you've got a town constable assuming the duties of both a qualified elector. That's step number 1, and then step number 2 is to also affirm that you're capable of carrying the duties of a town constable. If you do both of those, you are in an extremely empowered position to provide stability for everybody in your local geographical community, as well as starting these kind of American national conferences where you've got status of being a spokesperson for a specific grassroots level community under your precinct. 10% of your local already geographically mapped out precinct, 10% of that, any way you want to divide it, is your township jurisdiction. And as long as it's reasonable, that you may be able to find 10 qualified electors, counting yourself also, under that 10% of your precinct jurisdiction, then you're rock solid. You're like Teflon. Nothing can stick to you as a matter of law. Okay? Because you're outside of the de facto jurisdiction. Your township is a separate common law jurisdiction. The local city and municipal county type of government, they operate under an emergency war powers municipal franchise that is only in place so long as the people in that community are not competent to responsibly self-govern. See, once one of our town constables jumps up and says, okay, I claim the office of town constable for this 10% of our precinct jurisdiction in whatever county you're in, and your precinct number, at that point, the jurisdiction of the local city and county municipal jurisdictions, it shrinks, and you're starting, you're incubating, you're sprouting a Christian common law jurisdiction that is higher level law. You read the Seventh Amendment. The Seventh Amendment refers to a higher level of law because we make all of our important decisions, our judicial decisions, by trial by jury, okay? And that requires a higher level of community consensus law. Article 3 of the U.S. Constitution document, it references that the so-called de facto municipal U.S. Supreme Court and all the courts under it, their jurisdiction extends to admiralty, maritime, and suits in equity, and actions at law. Okay, that action at law, that is a kind of look-at-like, kind of crippled common law jurisdiction. It's not real common law because their franchise flows through a municipal charter, but it's at law, at common law jurisdiction. So they can kind of do common law due process if they choose to, but they've also got that equity, admiralty, maritime jurisdiction under Article 3 that they routinely do everything that they can under those, because those three jurisdictions facilitates the advancement of the agenda of the real evil empire that the 9 present Supreme Court judges are all prostituting themselves out for. So that's what they proceed under most all of the time, even down at the federal district court level and at the state circuit courts and superior courts and things like that. It's how they operate. But once we start doing common law township and precinct jurisdiction and holding our own common law jury trial verdicts, then all three of their admiralty, maritime, and equity jurisdictions evaporate, because the specific wording of the Seventh Amendment clearly declares that once a fact has been tried by a jury, that fact and judicial judgment cannot be re-examined except, as the wording of the Seventh Amendment says, quote, according to the rules of the common law, end quote. And that requires assembling another jury. The rules of the common law say that only a second jury is the only thing that can come to review a first jury that's made apparently, allegedly, an erroneous decision. and they're not gonna, it's almost incomprehensible that the de facto courts would assemble a jury to try to follow due process of law more efficiently than we would be doing, because we're looking for the conscience of the community. We got no rules on admissibility of evidence, things like that. It would be a game changer for them to try to follow due process of law better than we can do it. Okay, so once we start doing this process, once we start issuing more judgments, like our coronavirus partially completed jury verdict is already doing, please consider signing on to things like that. once we start getting more traction and getting this process more popular, start issuing more jury trial verdicts, boom, we're taking it back. We're causing their jurisdiction to shrink, and ours is expanding. It's growing. It's producing truth and justice and liberty and peace and economic security for the common American people. And it's like John said, once the cat's out of the bag, you can't put the milk back in the bottle. Once it's out and it's growing, it's going to spread like wildfire. And God's kingdom is coming to this earth, Brother Gregory. God's kingdom is coming. So I can rant a little bit too once in a while. I claim license to do that. Anyway, I love getting in a rant like that and speaking with good people that I believe are empathetic to a similar godly, righteous cause here. Any comments or questions or criticisms on what I've been saying or any other of the issues that we've been talking about here? Anybody? Maybe we should bring a close to our business meeting here. John indicated that he and David also indicated, and I guess Brother Gregory also has to leave here. Why don't I formally declare, let's see what time it is here as we're winding up. It looks like we're about at the 2.5 hour mark since we started, maybe a little bit under. But I'm going to officially declare our business meeting closed now. I want to thank all of the good, solid attendees here for attending. I really appreciate your presence. Our next conference will be on a Saturday night, approximately 2 weeks away. Our next Monday evening conference will be approximately a month away. Yeah, I believe that's the way we're going for a while, as long as my brain is a little bit schizophrenic here. And once I get everything organized, we got a new conferencing platform, and I'm doing a lot of homework to try and get things running better. And I do expect to convert to weekly calls here again in the future. But for right now, it's every other week. And yes, so we're bringing it to a close here. At least our business meeting. Any comments or questions as we draw to a conclusion our business meeting? Anybody?
I just wanted to say that I enjoy listening to you.
Well, thank you, John. I enjoy it.
It does. You know, it's inspiring. There's a way of thinking about things which I think is really significant. That there's a way in which we can do both, which is challenge the de facto and create what it is that we want by doing one and the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's significant.
And we need to keep the positive attitude, like Brother Gregory's bringing in a real strong traditional Christian tradition, and he's also on a positive note that God's kingdom is coming. We can put this together, and we have to keep that positive attitude, even amongst our non-Christian friends. If you're just having that positive attitude that we can build a better country, a better nation, a more righteous form of government, then we can move forward as a single body here. That's what we need. It's about spiritual trust, like what we were talking about before.
Yep.
Yeah. All
okay.
Right.
Bye, folks. Thank you.
Good night, John. Okay. Well, I guess at this point it's kind of open floor discussion. Chris or any of you other wallflowers care to jump in and chatter a little bit more about whatever might be on your mind? Hearing none, I can go ahead and do some a little bit more on our agenda, as long as I've got an audience here. Our agenda 5 item is talking about the powers of courts of justice. See, once you get to the precinct level court with our court of justice and our justice of the peace judicial officer, that's essentially a sovereign nation. Okay, the district, the jurisdiction of the precinct is referred to in statutory codes as a district. I've got case law that says that, in fact, it's in one of my memorandums. It says that the word district means precinct. The terms are interchangeable, and the very powerful Sixth Amendment refers to how criminal prosecutions are to be conducted in this United States of America nation. It says that criminal prosecutions shall be conducted within the state and the district within which the crime shall have been committed. That's the wording of the Sixth Amendment. That word district, according to case law, means precinct. That means our individual precincts, and there's about 300,000 of them in the USA, our individual precincts have the right to form their own court of justice, aka court of law, and to, after proper due process of law has been completed, and especially after you've got a unanimous 12-person jury verdict from qualified electors, then at that point you've got authority to get nasty and start issuing arrest warrants. Okay? Arrest warrants. That's where this has to.
Question.
Huh? Yeah. Anybody, Chris?
Just Chris, I've got a question for you, Charles.
Sure.
And we got some pretty wise minds, studied individuals on this call. Where do you go when the state and the district is also a party to the action? The district itself is a party. Where can you go to get justice? You got to go to the Supreme Court, the district courts of appeal. Where to?
We create our own courts as much as is necessary to address that issue, Chris.
I agree. I'm with you on that. And I'm still haven't got out of my house here for a few days because I've been busy, but I will be soon.
Okay. Can I expand a little bit?
Uh-huh.
All right. Thank you. Every single thing that the courts that are oppressing us all, does is de facto. It's emergency war powers. It's not legitimate constitutional jurisdiction. Okay? So our courts have authority to declare their judgments void and of no effect. Our courts are at a higher level of legitimacy than are their courts. Our courts are appellate courts and our Supreme Courts over their courts. We can overturn their jurisdictional judgments and everything, especially if we got a jury. What I've constructed this forum under, an American National Supreme Court of Law, if the only thing that is really kind of hindering us in taking control of everything in the United States of America, right from the legal entity that I've constructed here, is we don't have any unanimous jury verdicts here yet. And we're working on that with our coronavirus verdict. We've got about 6 signatures on that already. Thanks to you particularly, Chris. You're one of the 6 there. So once we start producing jury verdicts in response to the coronavirus issue and your case, Chris, and David Scheid's case, and some of the other cases that are being brought in front of us, once we start doing that, and even if we're not getting any of the recognition we need, once we start doing it, light bulbs will start going off in people's heads, and they'll start saying, well, Chris Cave got a jury verdict there, and David Scheid got a jury verdict there, and we got a jury verdict on the coronavirus issue. I got a case. I'd like to have a jury verdict on my case, no matter what the issue is. too. And people will start coming to us to get jury verdicts because we're capable of providing the essential ingredient to common law due process. Nobody else is doing this. Anna von Reitz isn't doing this. Destry isn't doing this. Beacon 37 Group isn't doing this. Nobody's doing this. And it's the pivot. It's the pivot on the scales of justice, where the scales of justice balance. It's that center pivot is like a ball bearing with 12 little ball bearings in it. And once they all harmonize that this guy is bad, he's a criminal, and this guy, Chris Cave, he's a righteous, wrong individual, and he deserves to have remedy in whatever manner he's requesting, including arrest warrants against these jackbooted Nazis if he wants them, then our process will start getting popular. And at that point, we'll be recruiting militia-type people to join Posse Comitatus and assist our peace officers, and it'll only be a matter of time before we're knocking on the doors of those corrupted, jackbooted Nazi criminals and taking them off away to some constitutional sheriff that has a jail cell that he's volunteering to help us take back the country. Yeah, I think that's how it's going to break. What do you think? Anybody? Who's here with us besides Chris? 755? I don't know who that is. It's just Chris and me.
That's Gary from Nevada.
Gary. Okay, everybody from Nevada.
I'm still here.
Nevada and Gary. Excellent. Gary or Chris. I'm doing quite a bit of it, and I'm doing quite a few bold claims here. Any of you guys got any constructive criticism or feedback or anything?
I haven't heard nothing wrong yet.
All right.
Sounds good to me.
All right. Well, I do hope, I do trust that you would tell me if you thought I was full of poop or something.
The platform seems to be.
No, you just remind me to call Chris.
Say what?
I said, now I got to call Chris because you reminded me of him.
Well, he's right here.
Nice to hear you there, Gary. I do say that just the platform.
I figured I'd give you a call and talk about your. I'd give you a call, talk about your case, and see when you want to do a radio show.
Okay, absolutely, anytime. I'm going to get off for now and enjoy my dinner. Thank you, gentlemen, for inviting me along, and I look forward to hearing from you, Mr. Bergman.
All right, you got it. I'll call you probably tomorrow. Bye.
All right. Yeah, Chris.
How many we got left?
Well, it's just you and me,
Gary.
Should we go ahead and call him in here? You got anything else you want to chat about?
Hey, no, I was going to ask you, have you had any Child Protective Services complaints or lawsuits?
The woman that invited me here to Texas, shortly after I arrived, within a couple of months, I arrived in August, September, it was a couple of months or so after that, she had grandkids that were in her custody that CPS came and took. I constructed a big old complaint on that. It's available on the internet. But that's gone to a back burner because CPS gave the kids back. But we're thinking about resurrecting it and bringing it back before our court here. Why do you ask?
This friend of mine, he used to live here in Nevada, and they gave him a bunch of shit. Anyway, now he's been down there in Victoria, Texas, doing Child Protective Services lawsuits. And he just went to Alaska for a friend that had a problem up there. But I was wondering whether or not it might be good to have him put lawsuits in with your court.
Yeah. We can push forward with that.
All right, I'll talk to him. Yeah, I'll talk to him. Then once if he says good, I'll just give him your phone number. His name's Tom Benson.
Okay. Yeah. I'm open public person. Share my number with anybody you like there, Gary.
Okay. Yeah. So I'll talk to him and see if if it would help his case by bringing it over to you too. So.
All right.
All right. Well, At least I know it worked, but we got high winds here, so that's probably what knocked out the internet.
Okay, well, maybe next time we'll have a more bug-free environment. I'm sorry we had problems with starting recording and things like that, but hopefully it'll go better here next time.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for the invite.
You bet.
Bye.
Take care now, Gary. Bye now.